Hello and welcome to Marketing Mavericks. This is a platform put together by Innova DDV, the advertising agency in Ghana, in partnership with MX24 to look at some of the key issues that are bother on our lives as a country, key trending topics that are important for us to understand and to analyze and to discuss. My name is Ebenezer Amankwa. I will be your host for today's show. The world has changed in diverse ways. Humanity knows now more and more about less and less. Social media has captivated our imagination like nothing else had since its inception, probably 20 or 30 years ago. Today, so many things are happening around, powered by social media. It is influencing our thinking, our governance, the way we view the world. The question of the age today is, do you believe what you see on the screens, on your phones? That's the question of the age. What is believable and what is not? And it is all aided by the power of social media. The AI revolution is still ongoing. I mean, when ChatGPT came along 2 years ago, it was hailed as the iPhone moment of generative AI. And so many other things are happening today. How, as a people, should we make sense of this development? How has social media changed our politics, for example, our social lives, our governance? These are pressing questions we need answers to. And today we are here to do just that. And so I have with me the right people to help us discuss this and analyze this in detail. Mr. Alfred Okanse. Alfred is a news anchor and known face on Media General TV3. I have Eunice. Eunice Ankuma is here. Eunice is actually the corporate communications manager of GIPS. GIPS, as you know, has been a flagship platform for digitalization in this country. I also have Stephen Nasser-Bodi. I mean, who doesn't know Stephen Nasser-Bodi? Now, Nasser-Bodi is actually the lead consult of Enable Consult. Nasser has been an activist in the digital communications platform for over 20 years in this country. Then I have the lovely and adorable Shamima Muslim. Shamima has been an activist for gender issues, has been a main media anchor for over 25 years. And these are the people who are going to help us make sense of today's discussion. How has social media changed our lives in so many diverse ways? So I'll quickly go straight to Nasser to set the ball rolling. Do you believe what you see?
Thank you very much, Eben. And it's good to be here with everyone here. I mean, such a strong panel. And I don't believe everything I see because, like I often say, with social media, if you add phones, so which is what we're using these days, anybody can create content. I mean, everybody's a publisher today. So you need to somehow kind of like validate and check everything that you are seeing on your phone, everything that you're reading, and you have to trust your sources. Otherwise, I mean, you could be lured into believing some kind of somebody's, figment of his own imagination. Throw into that generative AI today and deep fake and things like that, which we'll discuss later on. So somebody could even take this voice. You just, introduce the show.
Yeah.
They could take the voice and put a new script
Onto it. Goodness.
So what you said, it will be you opening your mouth doing everything all right, but what people will be hearing will be different than just generated by AI. So it's difficult, but hey, this is where we are, and as we will discuss during the course of the session, we can't run away from it.
Yeah.
It's about how we leverage it for our good, how we leverage it to develop our nation, to develop our society. That's the most important thing.
But you've been in this business for over 25 years or 30 years, for example. What are the changing dynamics that you have possibly, I'm sure you've sat down to reflect and seen. What are some of perhaps the key themes that you can unpack?
I think, key, so if I can do it this way, before 2005, for example, the way we knew media was very different. Like growing up, some of us, we used to gather around it radio with our parents in the evening, 6 o'clock news, listen to GBC2, listen to it. Early morning, my dad would go and get a graphic, and then we'd go back to dad's office to go and read it. In fact, when I got admission to go to tech, I had to see it in the newspapers. That's how it was published. You read the news during the cool days. If they said that Rollins was going to have a broadcast in the evening, we all gathered around radio, people gathered around. So that's how we knew it.
Yeah.
Then 2005 coming, when we saw social media, the way, I mean, not even the way we know it now, but we saw Facebook and the rest, MySpace and all those ones came up. Anybody with internet access could go online and engage with people. You could access news from everywhere. So it means the news that you were receiving was not what GBC was giving you. Now you have access to news internationally and all of that. Plus you had friends who could share things with you. Then around, let's say 2008, 2010, when we had what we call Web 2.0, which is now like more of not just reading content, but more of like platforms where you could engage. You could publish things and things like that. That then changed the dynamic completely. Then we saw the advent of smartphones. Because the Blackberries and the rest and the Nokias were not giving us this. But the smartphone has just changed everything. And you throw into that sense the last 2-3 years, AI. Then, I mean, you are talking about, you're in a different league. And if we understand media as just creating content and sharing it, communication, then anybody in the world can create stuff. We've seen how, because of that, in the States and elsewhere now, governments are being mindful. They know that during elections, for example, fake news can dominate. And fake news can deceive people to vote for the wrong parties, all those things. So now that awareness has to be there. People can sit in any corner. They say like some small boy can sit in his dad's garage and publish anything. And we are not far from that in Ghana because, I mean, these tools are available to us.
Yeah.
And it's not just in politics. Even in those of us who are in marketing, I've had to question sometimes some of the ads that some of my clients are running. Because instead of going out there to shoot, they use images that are not real. So you're telling a different story. Same way you go to villages, like my grandma in the village. Somebody goes to the village and tells a story, and they're circulating it. And my grandma will send me something on WhatsApp that I know is fake. How did she get it in the village?
Yeah.
You look at it and it's a TikTok image. So somebody created it on TikTok. It's circulating and she's gotten it in the village. She's sending it to me in Accra to warn me about something. That's where we are. So we need to be careful. I think we need to be more. It's good we're having this conversation. We need to educate ourselves. The platforms that we need to assess, and when we're assessing them, the mindset and the caution we need to exercise when we're assessing these platforms.
So, Alfred, you on traditional media, television, are you, with your experience, are you seeing a death, should I say, in the way people clamor for traditional as against the other side? And can any TV station or media survive without these other legs?
I would say straight no. But if you could just give me a minute just to compliment the point that Nasser made, that as to whether we believe what we see now. Just a week ago, a friend of mine sent me a video of me advertising some medicine that's supposed to cure something to do with men's sexuality. It's serious.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was on set on TV3, and this is the AI now speaking like me with my image, my voice, myself seated there.
Yeah.
So I woke up and 6 people had sent me the link to that video, saying, Alfred, do something about this. Do something about this. And I clicked on one, and they had gotten 250 shares.
Oh, no way.
Yes. And this is me there. And they've been able to mimic the voice, and you'd see my mouth muffled a bit, but then again, this is Alfred, really, advertising medicine for potency, male potency.
Interesting.
So, and what shocked me was that I thought that look, this is not going to pass. Nobody will really pay attention to this, so let me not. 2 days later, someone sends me a message and says, Alfred, well, I saw this, and I'm reading about it to see if it works.
Oh, wait.
Then I realized that, no, I've got to do something.
What did you do?
My IT people at Media General to send a message directly to Meta to have them, pull down the videos. So 2 days later, they sent an email. I had to follow up through a process of almost 72 hours.
Because it's difficult to actually get them to put it down.
Yes.
You need a lot of
So there's a lot that's going on, and when that was just to buttress the point that you make. And but back to the question. I think that right now, for any traditional media to survive, you cannot do it without the complementary role of social media. Because even with, our primary survival is based on revenue.
Yes.
Okay, so you have a number of the companies now spreading their advertising revenue on social media as well. So I recall that NASA has had this presentation with us at Media General, where, for instance, a company like Coca-Cola, 2 years ago, they were doing a budget of about 650,000 for TV3. A year later, they cut it down to 280,000. The rest spread on social media.
For sure.
And they are not alone. I see a number of the other companies as well. EcoBank, and the others. I'm sorry I'm mentioning brands, but that's just to send the message that these brands are now not only putting their money onto advertising on traditional media, but they are using social media. And the simple argument they make is you can at least measure the number of people who have watched your advert on social media. Traditional media, you need, the TVCs and then also your transmission certificate to know how many people or how your advert has reached, to what extent your advert has reached. So and it makes it easier for them, and that's on the advertisement side. For the news consumption side as well, or programming consumption side as well, that is also one that traditional media cannot do without. Because these days, for instance, for TV3 News, we get a lot more people viewing on social media than what you would say on traditional media. Because at 7 p.m., a lot of people on their way home, you cannot have everybody at home at that time. Okay, you have like 1,200 people live watching. Maybe after 2 hours, that number increases, because then after the news ends, people go back.
The playback.
To still playback as well.
Watch.
But if it was just traditional media, you cannot rewind your TV to see what happens at 7 p.m. when you get home at 9 p.m. So that's the role that social media plays as well in television programming, not just for the news, but all the other programs. So what we're doing, for instance, I can speak for TV3, and I know the other media houses are doing the same, is to do well to stream as many programs as possible on social media. Not just Facebook, but on X as well, so that people can interact. The interactive aspect of the programming as well. Important. Social media helps with that. But if it's traditional media, if somebody has an opinion about, for instance, something that you've put out on TV, they can only sit in their rooms and scream about it. This thing you are saying is not true. But if the person is minded, they can pick their phone and put a comment on the stream or share their opinion. And so that's another way of even engaging with your viewers as well. So there are so many complementary roles that social media plays for media.
From where you sit, what do you make of all this? Because I'm sure that obviously there are lots that goes on that you see.
Yes, certainly. When he mentioned how organizations are beginning to diversify, I could really resonated with me, because you're looking at the immediate engagement. You're looking at the fact that in terms of production, it's even cheaper. How much you spend on social media advertisements is cheaper. And then the impact is immediate. You can tell if a post, people are engaging with a post, you're able to measure. There are insights that guide you. You can pick feedback. I remember some years back, we had to literally build a page and grow it organically, because we were just taking the feedback from people and using that to create content for them, content that was relevant. Because someone is commenting and asking questions, and if you're an organization, you're serving a group of people, then you'd want to make sure that whatever it is you're putting out there is relevant to them. So that's what social media has done for us. It's given brands the opportunity to grow, to expand, to reach people that they couldn't have reached. Nasser just cited how his grandmother would do a video, send him a video created by someone, even though it's not factual, it's not accurate. Now people can be co-creators. They are their own content creators. You don't need someone to create the content for you. When you talk about employment, now you have a lot of young people who are creating content, and we are calling them influencers. And they are being influencers because they are leveraging a platform that allows them to create content that can resonate with people. So, I mean, social media has changed things for all of us. It has come to stay. Organizations cannot decide not to be there. Individuals cannot decide not to be there. Alfred is certain he is there, and someone is already creating content using his his image and his voice.
It speaks of one thing, that they believe that he can influence and move people.
Yes,
so that's like according to you, though.
He's an influencer. So you don't have a choice. You would have to be there. But for me, what we need to be doing more now is education, so that people can know when it's factual information, so we can curb what they would call the misinformation, the disinformation, and now the malicious, what they call the malinformation. So you know when and how to forward a particular content. When it gets to you and you know it's not factual, it stops with you. So we social media is a big deal now, and we all have to get in there and help people understand how to utilize it. So you are not just consuming content. If we can teach you to also be a creator and make money from that platform, because people are making some good money being on social media and creating content.
So Shamima, I mean, now let's come to the inclusivity part, for which you are very important. Has this enhanced inclusion on the gender side of things?
Okay, so I'm going to answer that, and then I'm going to backtrack a bit and speak conceptually about where to situate this conversation. So specifically with your questioning about inclusivity and ensuring that previously marginalized voices do now have a platform to self-express, and as Nasser also said, it the telephone is such a powerful tool now. Not just a telephone, but a telephone with data has all of a sudden empowered everyone, giving people voice, and it comes to the issue of media flows, which I'll speak about. But one of the threats to marginalization is the tendency of social media creating what I call echo chambers, as you also know. It virtually can reinforce existing stereotypes because you're targeting specific people who have access to a smartphone and can afford data because data is still as expensive. And that brings in one major issue with data, the data gap, and how these echo chambers, whether they are based on any scientific data. So when a business decides to move, say, 50% of its advertisement revenue to social media, what's really driving that? What deep research is driving that? Who are their publics? What about the other people who are not within that social media realm? How are they still going to reach those people? So it's a major issue, and it requires serious data to understand who are the users of social media. Otherwise, you're speaking to the same group of people if we don't know who the users are. If the users are expanding, just as we are speaking about internet penetration, and we know that we are not even near, I don't know what the average now is, but the last time we hadn't reached 50% as a country.
Now
we've gone over 50% now. So there's still a huge chunk of the populace that are still not connected. Okay, and if everything is happening around just social media and digital platforms, we are cutting off huge sections of our society from the necessary information. So that's one of the major issues with the inclusivity. But of course, the positive side is the fact that many people hitherto who are passive consumers of news are not only empowered to now be active, participants, not merely spectators no more, because they do have a phone. And that phone, if also misused, which we are seeing, leads a lot to the degeneration of the public discourse, because people you don't know, what do they call it? They don't show their face. We don't know them. And they just send all kinds of comments, faceless throws, if you call it. So there's the positive and there's the negative. What is real and constant is the fact that we can't do away with it. It's here to stay with us. So we need to figure out in what ways we're going to ensure that social media generates more good than harm. And conceptually, I think that the public discourse is devoid of conversations around the big issues and the big impacts, and often the conversations are around the effects, the cause effects issues, but the bigger substructural theories or thinkings behind the infiltration of these products, we're not having those deep conversations. So when I spoke about media flows generally, as it exists, was traditionally one-dimensional, where global news platforms dominated. And the Americans have used the media. Media is a tool of social conscientization, right? And it is the media that sold the American dream. And it's the same medium by which the Americans exported their cultural flows through their film, their television, their music, their entertainment. And now, if you ask, we are consuming those products, right? So it was one-way flow. What digital media has done now, and then of course there's a two-way flow, which now, because of continuous advocacy by people that says that the current global system is not equitable and it's not representative of the diversity of our individual countries. So some of these big global brands are, they are collaborating with local brands, and so it's become two-way flow now. So you would see international media diversifying their voices and their images. They would call you, and COVID helped to really demystify that you can be any and everywhere and you can still speak on any platform. Just last week I was in my home and I was speaking on a South African media platform. So that the Internet of Things is allowed for some empowerment of voices previously non-represented. And then it has become more multi-dimensional now with the advent of the digital and the Internet of Things, where now the information flows are no longer one-dimensional. They are no longer two ways from institutions to institution. They are now multi-dimensional in the sense that any and everyone is now a creator of content and a distributor of content.
Interesting.
And people define their competence, which is why the era of the influencers is a thing that is here to stay. No matter what the background is, what their expertise are, people are now counselors on TikTok, people are doctors on TikTok, people are psychologists on TikTok, people are fashion experts,
finance
finance experts on TikTok. So one major threat is that as it empowers, it also disempowers, because many people will not do they will not put in the work that should put them in a space to actually provide knowledge, beneficial knowledge. And that's why the era of all this misinformation is also creeping into. So we must create platforms like this where we have discourse around the big issues, and not just the reactive conversations to the use of technology, which is here to stay with us.
If you just joined us, this is Marketing Mavericks, powered by Innova DDB, the advertising agency. We are looking at the power of social media and how it's changed our lives for the better or for the worse, and in what areas can we pick up some of these key discussion points: politics, governance, social change movements here and there, and we are looking at that with Alfredo Kanse from Media General. Alfredo Kanse from Media General, a main news anchor. As I have Eunice Santoa, Ankoma. Eunice is with Gifts. Eunice has been in this fintech space for over 10 years. Nasser Boedi is a known digital media enthusiast and an entrepreneur. And then I have Shamima. Shamima as well. Shamima is a gender activist and a known media practitioner for over 25 years. But you see, just picking up on Shamima, I was like, is this misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, beyond this discourse, which is shedding light on what we're doing, would regulation also be another thing that can perhaps check? Because beyond the discourse, I don't know whether change can happen without regulation. For example, I mean, look at Alfred's situation. I mean, this is like what can he do to seek redress reputationally? Because I mean, would regulation be something that maybe governance-wise, like as a country, not necessarily individual, but as a country, for example?
So we need regulation at 3 different levels, the way I see it. At national level, governance. Okay, but the challenge we often have is that the developers are always ahead of the regulators.
The regulators.
That's right.
Like we've seen in meetings in the Senate where people like Zuckerberg speak, and it's above the head of a lot of the
they have no
senators
clue.
and the rest. Yeah, so we need that, and that leads me to the next level. The platform owners also need to do a lot more.
Yeah.
It shouldn't take 72 hours for Alfred's
Goodness.
video to be deleted or whatever. You understand what I mean? So they need to do a lot more. They should make it harder for people to publish. They do a bit. The same way that, for example, if I'm uploading an ad that's using, let's say, Sarkodie's music,
Questions.
it will not be approved if I don't have the rights to that machine. It's that simple. They need to do a lot more in the same way some of these things need to be done. That's the second part. The third part is what we need to do more self-regulation. The self-regulation comes from a lot of what Shamima said. We need to educate people a lot more. We need to have more conversations like this. Because unfortunately, when people get the phone and they get data, they feel they can just get out there and say whatever. Not realizing the impact and not also realizing even the influence that the platforms they are on, the information they're consuming has on them. So somehow we need to do a lot more self-regulation. In media houses, youth groups, we need to do a lot more. So we educate ourselves a lot more about self-regulation when it comes to using these. There's no point telling SS students they can't have phones on campus. They would find a way.
They will have it.
The solution is teaching them how to use it for good, how to use it in the right
That's important.
way. And we need to have this conversation.
That's important.
Otherwise, the Ministry of Education, whatever, they just pass laws that
That's
don't
important.
really work.
That's important.
And so, I mean, we need to have these 3 levels of regulation.
Yes, you have built a digital communication system from scratch, for a corporate organization. What are some of the lessons there in terms of regulation and making sure you get the buy-in?
So I think that even though now it has changed. I mean, back then, 2017, 2014,
14,
2015,
15, yeah.
social media was still coming up and was becoming a thing there. So companies were not sure how to play it. Is it safe for us to be there? Is it not safe for us to be there? Because we were still building the understanding. Someone can now crisis happened on social media, and before you know it, it's just gone.
They're talking about you online.
Yes,
and you're not
online,
there.
and then you are not there. So in trying to have a presence, you should know what exactly you want to be on the social media platform for. And the platforms behave differently. The audience and the behavior of LinkedIn is not the same as
course.
Instagram and TikTok.
Or Facebook.
So you shouldn't, or Facebook. So as a business, if you want to have presence on social media, you shouldn't be in a hurry to just jump on because everybody is on social media. What are your business objectives? Who are you seeking to target? What do you even want to do on that platform? What I do or what a brand would do on LinkedIn is totally different from how you'd want to behave on TikTok. If you don't add a little humor and create video content that are exciting, nobody would engage with your content. So in trying to be there, you should know what you are there for. What's the behavior of your brand? You should also do some assessment of your brand. If you think that your audience are not there, or you can have a presence there, but your objective should dictate the kind of content or the kind of information you generate and put there. If you don't do all those background check and you just jump in there, what will happen is that you'd be on social media, but you'll be very ineffective. People will not engage with your content. That's one. And then you would become just, you carry, it would be like passing information. You're just there disseminating
Dumping information there.
So you're just dumping information there, and people are asking follow-up questions and you are not responding. And you should also have a team. Now, you cannot be on social media and decide that it's just a thing you are there. You should have a dedicated team that is on social media, managing the platforms for you, responding to customers, because it's also a very good platform to get insight and feedback on what you are doing as a business. Yes. So sometimes you're offering a particular service, customers cannot even know where you are to even channel their grievances. But on social media, when you post and they don't like it, they would come and comment. So it becomes a good opportunity for you to gather that data and do something relevant with that particular data. So businesses can be there, but they need to know their why, their what's, and then what they're going to be putting there on those platforms.
Alfred, I mean, this is an election year.
Absolutely.
I mean, 5 months to elections, I think. You know, in terms of social change and even our politics, how is that changing? You've seen it from years, or maybe a decade or so. How is that changing? What is social media's role in changing this?
Thank you. And I think that this year's election has seen, in my view, the build-up to the elections has seen a lot more investment by the political parties in social media, advertising, and engagement. My first election that I covered was in 2008.
Yeah.
I mean, and then you would hardly hear any of the parties talk about let's have an X-based conversation. I mean, then it was obviously, you know, or let's even put a small part of our campaign song or campaign advert on Facebook. No, they cherished that in-person kind of contact. Because how many people were using smartphones then? No. So I would say that even the times and the trends then did not give them any reason to want to, consider social media as a means of campaigning or reaching the target market. Fast forward to 2012, for the NPP, I say for the NPP because at the time they had engaged a young man, I don't mention his name, to now begin to do the thinking for them about social media and its impact. The NDC was in power at the time. What I think they lost out on was because the whole focus was on the death of John Evans Atta Mills. And so the fulcrum of that campaign that year was on the sympathy of the people for what had happened. So there wasn't so much investment into, okay, how do we reach the people? Everything was about a sympathy message, and it worked for them. Fast forward to 2016, then we saw what the NPP had started doing from 2012, the fruits of it. So you see, Nana Akufo-Addo, who was a candidate then and president now, takes some fruit juice and he takes a picture, and that goes viral. It becomes a message, and that is leveraged on, right? You don't see that same kind of investment for the other political parties. Reason being, at the time, maybe the thinking into the role of social media in campaigning, one party had started it maybe 4 years before. If you fast forward into 2020, we saw a lot more from both political parties. I can say for sure that with I have seen, at least for the past 8 months, from both sides, it tells me that they are well aware of what social media can do for their campaign. It can make or unmake your campaign. That is what is happening right now. And I see that both parties, I'm centering my analysis on both parties, because the other political parties, I haven't seen their strategy. I don't even know their presidential candidates, But I can speak for both parties and the likes of Nana Bediakon, and then also Alan Chermanting as well. But I developed my heart for Nana Bediakon because of his leverage for this new wave of marketing.
But is that not only in Accra, for example, Alfred?
Well, see, let me give you an example. This mask thing that he did,
all over the place,
is now, and I'm in school, right? And one of the lecturers actually used, this is at the graduate level, using that as a reference point to teach students about the efficiency of that kind of marketing strategy.
Wow.
Where you got everybody talking, and it wasn't just in Accra. I mean, some of the places that those billboards were mounted, some chiefs actually had to go and pull it down because they thought it was some fetish. That's the effect. And then now he unmasks, that anonymous kind of marketing style. Now that is what is making him the talk. That, this was a person behind the mask. Apart from that, really, you can talk about the message differently. But the bottom line is that the major political parties going into this election have employed strategists. And I know Nana saying, he's available.
Yeah, he's available actually. For those who are watching,
Consultation.
And yes, doing a lot of strategy work. Some of them actually have offices right now, because your message can reach a certain target market that is on social media, and that's the youth.
So now from segue from Alfred, I ask you the question: Can it swing an election?
It can, and this is why I say it can. If you look at any election, and in particular this election that we're getting into, it's going to be decided by first-time voters and undecided. And these two categories of people are more active online. Now, these are also people who don't attend rallies. If you're going to even have like the political rallies, we know them. Where people drive, mount some stage, and they don't get them. I put it this way: they expect you to come online and engage them. They're not going to come to your rallies, and they want you to give them a reason to vote for them.
Yeah.
And like we know in Ghana, those of us who've done a steady day, I think both parties, the MPP and DC, can almost always guarantee their 40%. It's the bit in the middle, 40% of the votes. It's the bit that they need to get them over to 51%, 50% plus one. And that would come from these segments. That's why, like Alfred is saying, they're actively creating online presence and pushing content. The only bit I'll add is that they are ignoring the listening part. And I mean, you see, social media is powerful for insight generation and also doing polls, and because to be able to run a successful campaign, you need to be more nimble. You need to be able to respond to things more quickly. So, for example, you post something, or the candidate goes to speak somewhere, and it's being streamed. Within minutes, you get the sentiments if you're monitoring it. So, on the next stop, you should be able to speak to certain
the key message there. True.
And so they need to surround themselves with people who are actively listening to some of these. And the truth is that we're talking about it. The youth who you want, who are mainly the first-time voters, and also the elite, if I can call them, who are undecided. They are not committed to either party. They are out there, they are very vocal. If they are watching it, like Alfred said earlier, they will comment. Even for churches, I often say it, when there's a live stream, the real conversation happens at sale. So monitor the conversation that's going on and the tweet. That's why you need to have like your hashtag and publicize it. So people, because they want to be heard, they want to feel that they've got something to say and they will say it. So have these you go elsewhere, and some of them are doing it in Ghana. There are wall-to-wall screens, like in a typical newsroom, where they are monitoring and seeing what's going on. That's how it should happen. So it would work. Now, some people may say, well, if you go to the villages, social media, they work on it. The same way I explained that when I was growing up, my grandma used to tell me, now say, write this letter for me. So she dictate for me what I should write for her. In the same way, they all have smartphones in the villages. They'll come to you and say, Beba, open this for me. And they can hear the voice note, they can watch the video and all of that. So how you package the content is very, very important. Yeah. To the extent that even if you want IVR, which I think you said it, I'm saying, in 2008, I came down to monitor it, and Nanadi used IVR. So you'll be there and then they'll call you, oh, Nanadi, whatever, speaking to you like whatever. USSD and things like that. Today, we should be able, the party should be looking into that. Where even WhatsApp, there are APIs you can build into WhatsApp, where you can dial and you're engaging like a chatbot, and it can be able to engage you so they can ask questions. Yeah. Okay, what's your... We are people from, let's see, Kwabenya. What are you doing about Kwabenya roads? All those things. You'll be able to ask specific things like that, and then have a team that are responding to these. That's how they need to leverage it. So they are active there, but I think there's a bit more to do when it comes to using it effectively to really swing and win the election.
You have come under attack recently for for something you did in the best interest of the country, but obviously perceptions were. I mean, what are your thoughts on some of these things as
just so to remind ourselves of the power of social media causing change and behavioral change and shifts in patterns. We all know that the Drop the Chamber campaign was largely successful as a result of the social media mobilization. And the recent one with the Fix the Country campaign, Occupy Jolobi, all these campaigns leveraged social media to get young people out there in their numbers and to cause shifts, in government action. So as for its power, I think we cannot underestimate it. But like you're saying, it also has its negative side. And in an election year like this, especially the media as gatekeepers, because you see, one of the threats to our democracy is also excessive government power. Because when government would give you a carrot and then they'll go around and try to subjugate the expression of your rights. So fundamentally, we know that at the basis of our democracy and its sustenance is freedom of expression. That we must protect at all costs, no matter what the negative side is. What we now have to do is, like you're saying, ensure that there are mechanisms in place so that in the expression of that freedom, we don't ourselves now cause problems for our democracy and our peace. And I think there are ways we can go around that without an overbearing government intervention and a certain level of regulation that will now take back the rights of citizens. But the thing I also need to add is that we really truly need to have conversations about sanitizing public discourse, because the discourse is not very sanitary. I don't know how we regulate that.
But how do you do that? How without sacrificing it on the altar of, say, freedom of speech or something? How do you?
We need. You go on. I've done a bit of work with DW. Okay. Yeah. When we talk about media viability, I think some of you guys even came to some of my trainings with them. We have a media landscape where, let's face it, journalists are not paid very well. So they are susceptible to a lot of influence from politicians and that. And so we are not getting various things get said on radio, on TV, and they are not fact checked. We need to somehow get to a point where the media, as the fourth estate, somehow sanitizes the space a bit. There are some conversations that we need to. There are some people that we need to call out.
Because a lot of the conversations start from the fights within media platforms, right? But we do have fact-checking organizations now, so I think that they must ramp up their work. The independent fact-checking. Rabiu is doing great in all of those ones. We need that. And then even the media houses themselves have their fact-checking decks, so that, because when you're a host, it's difficult sometimes. You have MPP, you have NDC. When they are making pronouncements in the heat of it, it is difficult for you to say that the person is talking like they know what they are saying. So you as a host, you are not privy to everything. No. So sometimes it's difficult to fact check them there and then on some of the claims they make, unless you have a very strong production that is, supporting. So we need that. But I'm also talking about the discourse on social media. The insults where people can't seem to disagree without plain insults. I think that comes back to our value system, and we must teach those values from the basic to the high level. People don't know good behavior. We assume that people know basic etiquette. Etiquette teaching is lost out on us, and we must go back to teaching etiquette right from the basic level, but call on those adults that continue to also misbehave, because a lot of the young people will say that, look at what you are doing, then you don't want us to insult you. The trust that the young people are losing for our public leaders is very serious, and it's that mistrust is leading to disrespect, because they feel you don't deserve their respect, I beg your pardon. So the public officers must themselves behave properly, so that the young people would accord them the right respect. But we need to bring back the values to the basic level.
Thank you very much. Honestly, I think it's just spot on. You're going to say something about Saturday mornings. I was interested.
I was saying a lot of these conversations happen on Saturday mornings. I mean, I sympathize with you. You
on Monday
it's always it's like they come there to hijack the show to say whatever they want to say.
Attack the host sometimes.
Yes. So I think that on the bit about regulation, the traditional media has some regulatory measures in place, both internally as a media house and then externally per for instance, the National Media Commission's own regulations, and then the NCA as well. There's a certain limit that you can go with certain pronouncements or publications on TV, radio, or in the newspapers. The lacuna in the law, or the vacuum in the law, is the social media. Because, for instance, for us, traditional media, you can be sued for defamation. Even though the criminal libel law has been repealed to open up the space for media and press freedom and so on. You can't still go ahead and just make any statement about someone without any factual basis or verification and go scot-free. So you have media persons being slapped with defamation suits every now and then because some have chosen to go personal and insult personalities even on traditional media. But for social media, there's no regulation, really, as we speak. So people can get away with publications of defamation on social media, and they cannot be sued. Because, as we speak, our laws have not evolved to, as it were, address that problem that social media has brought. So you have a lot more people who have social media channels that run like a television station because they have programs at a particular time of the day. They have YouTube channels that have also stream. Absolutely. Bloggers. Oh. That also have some linkages on. So you have a YouTube channel that has a link on Facebook. Because you can share it across social media. And there's no regulation for that. Because the person can just be there and say anything. That's where the problem is. Because the troll that you see on social media, there's no way any traditional media would allow that height of trolls. Because you know that the National Media Commission will come for you The NCA at some point can even repeal your license, or your media house could be closed down. The kind of threats that people receive on social media cannot be transferred onto traditional media. A number of radio stations were closed not too long ago. The latest one being in the troubled region of Boko, the Boko area, because of certain broadcasts that was going on. That same broadcast and worse was going on social media, where the factions in the conflict were literally threatening each other with whatever they wanted to do and posting videos of what the one faction had done to the other. Those social media handles or pages were not closed down. They were not shut. Facebook can flag you know, but then it ends there.
Yeah.
So that's the real threat in my view, because for traditional media it's regulated, you know. But how do we address that bit about the social media threat? Because we're going into an election, the stakes are high. At least I can speak for since 2008. I haven't seen the stakes in an election so high as this. It's as though everything is about 2024. It's do or die. You know, it's even beyond do and die, honestly.
Well, isn't every election do or die?
you know, but that tells you. So for me, a lot of things can happen on social media and people can get away with it. Mm-hmm. But it is now behoves on us as traditional media persons to know how to translate what goes on social media into traditional media. Because Samima mentioned something briefly in passing, that the conversation starts on social media.
Yeah.
And that's what's the case. A lot of people would come to, for instance, TV3 or any other media house to confirm what they have read on social media.
Yeah, true.
And what we also do now is that we would monitor what the trends are.
Yeah.
And then leverage on the trends.
Exactly. Yeah.
So for instance, for me, the talk shows that I host, on Saturday morning, maybe from Wednesday, we start monitoring what are the trending issues on Twitter.
So who is setting the agenda for us these days
so
now?
here's the thing. So that's where for me there has to be it's a big conversation. There has to be that fundamental consideration of fact checking.
Yeah.
You know, something might be trending but not necessarily factual.
Yeah.
So that's where for us as traditional media, before we take what is of news, sort of, on social media, we do our homework well before it becomes news, really.
I mean, Eunice, I know you have stuff to say, so please come and say them.
So when he was talking about knowing when the fact that the agenda setting, it's now becoming, for me, it's becoming like a two-way thing. Because sometimes some media houses pick what is trending online and then bring it in-house. But you also know that traditional media has built a lot of trust over the years. So for people who understand that there can be misinformation or disinformation on social media, they are careful to always come back to traditional media platforms to verify those information. And so for me, that's the power that we have now. But of concern is the fact that the institution, the agencies creating these platforms they are not in Africa, they are not in Ghana. So putting in place policies like violations and when to know which information, even the language that someone is using to create the content, might not be a language that your AI tool can pick and then analyze and then know that this information will cause harm. And so we are beginning to get away with a lot of things. Because one, they are creating and designing this platform with no cultural or environmental context in mind. They're doing it out there and then dumping it on us, and we are consuming and using it for what we want to use it for. So regulating, sitting here, I think our regulators, it's becoming a big challenge for even us, which is why NASA mentioned that Mark would go somewhere to a parliament and then speak, and then like over their heads, they have absolutely no clue what is happening. And that's what is happening here right now. So regulating the space is going to be quite a challenge. But for me, what we need to be thinking about is digital literacy. How do we begin to empower individuals to know when to pick out information and keep them, and when to know that this information is not factual? Shamima talk about the morals as a society. At what point do we begin to accept that this particular content has gone overboard? So let's put it somewhere and pay attention. So, and it all boils down to literacy. We need to begin to educate people to know even when, you see an information has been forwarded to you about 25 times and it gets to you and then you are noticing that this information is not accurate. People are passing false information and getting individuals to disclose very sensitive information about them. So we need to begin to take the education out there, let people know. And that's what, for me, the regulatory agencies can do now. So if you are a ministry in charge of communication and digitalization, what can you do to ensure that in as much as you are championing the use of digital platforms, what educational measures are you putting in place to ensure that people are empowered enough to consume and use those platforms without necessarily causing harm to society?
But have we even wondered about the existential crisis that many of our states that are plugged into these products that we don't own, control, manage? When that internet crisis happened,
recently,
our systems were grounded
Exposed.
to a halt. So, we must talk about those things. You see, we are fighting about the bigger threats are the fact that our government, our information, all sits in clouds that are being managed, controlled by elsewhere. That's the bigger conversation for many African states.
I like where you're going with this, and this is one of my disappointments. When we go around gloating that Twitter has an office in Ghana, how are we engaging them? You understand what I mean? It's a big challenge for us. I like what Fred said. The good news in all of this is that traditional media houses, because of the ethics that the journalists practice, always be places where we'll go to fact check. But how many of us are going to fact check? If I see something published, for example, there are basic things I would do. All right, go to the page that's sharing this. What's the engagement on that page? Who is this? Is this some blogger? Has it been published by TV3? Has it been published by CT? Or whatever. Same way, like if it's sports, now here's something. Has TG published it? There are people that you see, there are influencers in these spaces as well.
Gullibility.
So the point I'm making is that we need to educate more people. Same way it comes to your big gifts, for example. The investment we've made in making sure that people are not defrauded when it comes to Momo. We should invest equal amount of resources in educating people to be more guarded when it comes to sharing content, because social media is even worse. You see, it's not just about the publisher. The second is published. Somebody has screenshot it and it's gone.
Of Israel out there, Gibbs. How many handles? Like how many other?
And that taken to another level where we need to all encourage all recognized media to verify their platforms. Otherwise, people will go to fake ones and be consuming, sharing content from there. But if it's verified, then because you're putting yourself out there saying that we are legit.
Like I went to order food from
a
number. A number I took from Facebook. The food never arrived.
But you sent the money.
Only of course.
and you think these same things are happening
I didn't even know this thing was happening to me. I thought I was too smart.
There are ways of knowing whether a page that is selling things to you is actually credible. Nasa had mentioned one. You go, you look at the engagement, you look at the content that they are posting there, the quality of the content, the originality of the content that they are posting there. So all those things gives you an idea whether the business you are. So even if it is not a verified, because the verification also comes at a cost. So even if it's not a verified account, there are some things that you look out for. What kind of content are they posting there? what's their engagement like? What are people saying about them? You know, so you are able to pick that this particular page that I'm ordering this food from, perhaps some have a lot of numbers. So if you only use followership to order, you might land yourself in trouble. Not every page with so many numbers means that some have been promoting because they are defrauding people, so they invest in promoting to get the numbers.
So yes,
Yeah, so you have to be very, very careful before your food delays forever and never gets to you.
We should apply these same guidelines to
Even the content.
Content
other
yes,
content that we
consume.
should
Yes.
engage with.
Yes.
My other
I'll
worry
quickly come to you
briefly
there.
is the issues that catch our attention. And so I was at this conference, and the global vice president of Google, was sharing some statistics about it. We're just his speech was about the media and the future of the media, right? And how we are tickling ourselves into irrelevance, unfortunately. And he did make a point that globally, only about 5% or so of searches on Google are about serious news. And when we come back onto the things that make the trends, and you see, because we say there's knowledge gap, there's information gap, you follow all of these big organizations that come up with very important publications, information, knowledge, economics, finance, and you see the engagement on those reports. Sometimes I even feel shy because you hear a big organization, you go to their
Nobody
Twitter,
cares.
the number of people who are following them, nobody cares. And yet, let it be entertainment, let it be about somebody's marriage issues, let it be about somebody sleeping with someone. Look at the trends. So how do we revert? Because obviously, a country as poor as ours cannot be majoring in these kinds of minors and expect to pull ourselves anytime soon out of the current doldrums we find ourselves. And if it is politics, it must be that they are fighting and insulting for it to trend. Do you get it? It must be a fight. If you have a program, a moderate, a perfect program that is very informative, you will not get the trend. At best, some people will call you, wow, today was a very good program. at best. But you're not going to get those commendations online. And this is shaping that the echo chambers I'm speaking about is just reinforcing these stereotypes. Then, then we all repeat it. That, to trend, then you must cause some controversy on your show. So even some hosts want controversy to happen in order for them to trend.
Well, it happens. I mean,
and the
clickbait as well. Yes, you're right.
For the parties, they actually reward people who can insult or who can fire more. And we've seen this over the period where political parties tend to rather encourage that, and so media is also now caught in that position of wanting to. It's all about the numbers game. So if you do a great program with Shamima and all people who will not insult, who will not shout and fire, right? It may not trend. In fact, it will not, right? And your media organizer or the organization will come out and say, look, Alfred, this show, the numbers...
Some way.
We're not impressive.
Some way, and then they'll either change you, the host, or bring someone who can bring them the numbers. It is all about the numbers now. Anything for the numbers and not the content.
Let me thank you all for this session. It's been, as you can see, we can go on and we won't stop. But this is Marketing Mavericks, powered by Innova DDB. I was here with Alfred, Eunice, Nase, Shamima. My name is Ebenezer Mankwa. We'll come away some other time with a different topic, but very interesting. Thank you so much, and have a good day.